MJF references CM Punk and the infamous AEW All Out press conference on Dynamite last night. The Elite are on their way back to AEW. We've got the latest tease that they'll be making their return at Full Gear later this month. Jeff Jarrett is now in AEW, and he had some comments referencing Braun Strowman and Triple H and the WWE last night on Dynamite. Saraya has now been cleared by AEW. She'll be facing Britt Baker at Full Gear later this month. Samoa Joe shockingly turns heel on Dynamite's last night. We've got the latest on AEW's negotiations with Warner Bros. Discovery and the chances that they will be renewed with the network. Plus, AEW's on their way to the UK in 2023. Is Chris Jericho on a well-known Fox program? Maybe, just maybe. We've got the card for this week's edition of Rampage. Plus, a title match has been announced for Full Gear. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, especially after last night's edition of Dynamite live on TBS. So let's get straight into it. And MJF, as always, is making headlines, but especially after last night when he had a very, very interesting promo. He wasn't actually on the show inside the arena, but certainly he spoke for the first time since being attacked by the firm several weeks ago. And MJF, of course, loves to toot his own horn. And the AEW star did so again on last night's edition of Dynamite, comparing himself to WWE legends such as Hulk Hogan, The Rock, and John Cena, Bruno Sammartino, and others. Less than 10 days away from his potential coronation as AEW World Champion, MJF appeared as a guest on the Pardon My Take podcast to explain why his victory against Jon Moxley at Full Gear could usher in a new era in the professional wrestling industry. Quote, "This is the most important match of my entire career," MJF admitted. "What wrestling fans don't understand is this is also possibly the most important match in the history of our sport. This could be the potential crowning of the next face of the next generation of professional wrestling. You see, every once in a blue moon, we see people lead the charge of the generation who bring professional wrestling to new heights. Guys like Bruno Sammartino, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold, The Rock, John Cena. All of these men were generational talents, and that's exactly who MJF is." MJF continued, "So here's what's going to happen. All I have to do is etch my name into history is to have a long, fruitful world title reign, and the only person getting in my way is Jon Moxley. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend Jon Moxley is an easy competitor. I don't like you, Jon, but I do respect you because you weren't born to be a world champion. Matter of fact, you were born with 2 left feet, not one athletic bone in your body. However, I respect you because you had to work your ass off to become the man you are today." MJF would continue to praise Moxley's willingness to shed blood, sweat, and tears for the business, which once again seemed to hint at a character change on the part of Maxwell Jacob Friedman. As reported previously, there is growing momentum within AEW of, quote, "going all the way" with an MJF babyface turn, something AEW Creative could pull the trigger on at Full Gear. Fans believe if MJF were to beat Moxley without outside interference or shenanigans, he'd establish himself as a full-blown babyface. However, after he was attacked by the firm several weeks ago on Dynamite, some people believe it's just a red herring, and in fact, in actuality, MJF will be an even bigger heel coming out of Full Gear when he uses the assistance of Stokely Hathaway to win the AEW World Championship. But we now have, with this MJF promo, the first direct reference of the AEW post-All Out media scrum, which saw CM Punk have a meltdown, and of course, who went there? MJF went there. In this unique promo segment with MJF speaking directly to the camera in a podcast interview setting, he spoke about not only the ways in which he is the future of the professional wrestling industry, like I said, but he also directly referenced CM Punk's explosive tirade during the AEW post-All Out media scrum. While running down a list of moments that should have been focused on him, which could have been his moment in the spotlight, he juxtaposed what stole that moment from him. His big return at AEW's pay-per-view after literal months off television and in silence and intensely hot speculation, MJF said, "On my big return, the spotlight was on a press conference." Now, obviously, certainly it was a fantastic promo, and it really is the first time we've really actually got a full-blown reference as to the press conference or the incident itself at All Out or after All Out in Chicago. I thought it was a fantastic promo, certainly. As I mentioned, this is clearly because MJF is on set at the moment. I think in reality they would prefer to have MJF there for Dynamite on live television in the ring cutting promos. But of course we know he's currently part of the cast of the Iron Claw. He's portraying Lance Von Erich, the fake Von Erich, as it were, in that big Hollywood production. So because of that, we didn't have MJF in person on Dynamite last night. But, I mean, there's a couple of different things. Obviously, a lot of people will be talking about the CM Punk reference and the All Out reference because it's the first one. I mean, now that the investigation is concluded, now that it's wrapped up, we might start to get more of this. And I guess in the future, especially with the Elite coming back, we'll talk about their return in just a second. But with the Elite coming back, we're gonna get more of that. It is what it is. It's a massive story. People still want to kind of talk about it. We're never going to get full-blown comments because I think everyone involved has had to sign NDAs or as part of their suspensions or returns to the company. We're never going to get that interview, that shoot interview. Maybe that will come years down the line, but certainly this is as much as we're going to get. As far as the promo, MJF's not really lying. He's not. He is the best thing on that show. He is the biggest, I think potentially the biggest star they've got. For a guy his age, he's mid-20s. This is what people forget about him because he's been around for such a long time. He is mid-20s. He's not even at his peak at the moment, and he's already insanely over. As I keep saying, the important thing for me, I think they could absolutely do a babyface turn with MJF. I think he can absolutely be a babyface. My only thing with MJF at the moment is when you do really pull the trigger on that turn, go Stone Cold Steve Austin settings. Do not change the character. Change the opponents. That it. Still rage against authority. Still rage against the company. Still say all of these people have been holding me back. Still say that the machine doesn't get behind me. I'm the anti-champion, but I'm the champion of the people. Do stuff like that. Just change the opponents. Don't change the character. Because what people like is the MJF character. We don't need to see smiling goody two-shoes MJF. No, we don't. We like this MJF. We just want to see the opponents change. We want to be allowed to cheer for him. That's the only thing we want to see. So, as always, I thought the promo was excellent. But speaking of Full Gear, the Elite seemingly will be returning now at the event. It was pretty much confirmed. Not officially, but pretty much confirmed last night on Dynamite. And all signs point to Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks returning to action at AEW's upcoming Full Gear pay-per-view. On last night's edition of Dynamite, another vignette aired showing images of the Full Gear graphics, along with pictures from the Elite's past exploits in AEW and professional wrestling in general. The video, which also included shots of Omega, Nick, and Matt Jackson growing up, ended with a clock ticking towards 12. When the clock struck 12, the previously deleted trio returned on a stage for AEW's inaugural rally that was held on January 8, 2019 in Jacksonville, Florida. According to several reports, the Elite is penciled in for a match against Death Triangle at Full Gear, with Pac and the Lucha Brothers defending their AEW World Trios Tag Team titles against the inaugural champions. The Elite were forced to relinquish the newly minted titles owing to its involvement in the post-AEW All-Out melee involving CM Punk, Larry the Dog, and Ace Steel. If AEW is indeed planning the Elite vs. Death Triangle for Full Gear, Omega and the Bucks could likely return to AEW programming at next week's Dynamite in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The AEW EVPs have reportedly been backstage at television tapings over the past few weeks. We don't know if they were last night, but chances are that they were, working closely with the promotion's creative team to build up to their return. So, again, it's more hints that the Elite, not only are they coming back, we know they're coming back at this point, but nevertheless, we certainly do know that they're coming back at Full Gear. A lot of people were talking about that it featured lots of shots of current WWE stars, such as AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes as well. But it would, because they're part of the Elite's history. They're part of the Elite's story. So, of course, they would be... If they're telling the story of the Elite's past, and the storyline kind of is that the Elite were erased from AEW and they were erased from professional wrestling, the way to restore them is to restore everything, not just the most recent version of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, but their entire past as well. You can't acknowledge and plan for the future without referencing your past. So that's really, I think, what the storyline they're doing here. As I mentioned, I don't know if we're going to get an official announcement next week. I mean, chances are we will. You know, it's one of these situations whereby we know the Elite's coming back at Full Gear. I mean, the graphics are there. You can see it on the screen. They've got the cogs and the clocks and all this kind of stuff. And there was pictures of the Prudential Center, which is where Full Gear is. So the vignette is saying the Elite will be restored at Full Gear. And I think we'll probably get some kind of special entrance at the event as well, whereby, as I mentioned, they've been deleted, but they will be fully restored and they will fully slowly reappear and materialize, as it will, in the Prudential Center at Full Gear. I think they'll win. It doesn't make any sense for them to lose on their return, and then they'll pick up where the original plans were, which was for the AEW World Trios Tag Team Championship. So, again, we might get an official announcement next week. We might not. There might be a situation where it's just the Lucha Bros or Death Triangle are defending their titles at Full Gear against a mystery opponent. Wink, wink. Everyone knows who it is. So I think that's what we're going to get there. Jeff Jarrett, of course, made his AEW debut last week, and he spoke once again last night on TBS, and there were some WWE references, because, of course, Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal will be teaming up once again, just like they did for Ric Flair's last match. This time, though, their opponents will be inside of an AEW ring, because they'll be facing off against Sting and Darby Allin at Full Gear on November 19. A week after his arrival in All Elite Wrestling, Jarrett returned to the scene on last night's Dynamite, explaining why he has aligned himself with Lethal, Satnam Singh, Sonjay Dutt on AEW programming. He said, after more than 1 million views of my debut, the question is why? When a friend calls up, a friend shows up, Jarrett told Shivani in an interview. I showed up to help, and we started our plan last week. Jarrett would then recap the history shared by Lethal, Dutt, and himself, making references to Impact Wrestling and the now defunct Global Force Wrestling. He would also praise Satnam Singh as a, quote, legitimate giant, taking a shot at, quote, fake giants in red skinny jeans, which of course is a reference to Braun Strowman. The segment ended with Jarrett getting annoyed, an AEW crew member, for asking him to get off the stage and wrapping up, presumably due to time constraints. He was, don't wrap me up. I don't like being wrapped up. And he chased him around the ringside area. I thought he was going to hit it with a guitar. He didn't. Nevertheless, he chased this AEW official with a guitar until he was calmed down by Sonjay Dutt. He also made reference, as I mentioned, to Triple H, and whilst he made reference to Braun Strowman as well, saying that, as I mentioned, that Strowman, or that Satnam Singh rather, was not a make-believe monster who wears skinny jeans. And then he also said that he was produced in the Banana Nose Circus. So a reference to WWE, which of course is what people were talking about coming out of the promo. It was one of those ones, and honestly, guys, you know me, I keep it very honest, and I try my very best not to be biased to either side, whether it's WWE or AEW or whatever wrestling news I really cover. I always say, I'm a fan of WWE, I'm a fan of AEW, and I'm a fan of Impact, I'm a fan of pro wrestling, right? If pro wrestling's good, I like it. If I don't like it, that's my personal preference. You might have not have liked it. I don't really care too much when they do these WWE references, as long as they're done correctly and it's the right moment. But it's just so cookie cutter at this point, whereby someone comes in to AEW that's got a past in WWE and they take a shot at WWE, and it's like, well, it's lost its gusto at this point. It doesn't mean as much. It's an eye roller at this point. It's just, okay, the same guy that he was at SummerSlam this year, and he was more than happy to take checks from WWE. And if WWE called him when this AEW run is over, he'll go back. I don't get it. And I understand that the mindset of, if you're number two, which AEW is, if you're the number two company, not number two as in poo, if you're number two company, you take shots at number one because you want number one to pay attention to you. If you're number one, you don't even pretend number two exists. That's how it works. But at the same time, it's just a bit of an eye roller because everyone does it at this point, and it was unnecessary. It wasn't needed. I know Braun Strowman's been in the news. We covered it over the last weeks for his comments after Crown Jewel, but still, it's just a case of, was it really needed? Did the promo need it? Sometimes I feel like these ex-WWE stars make their debuts, and when they're doing their promo, the crowd goes a bit quiet, or because they're not heavily scripted like they are in WWE, they kind of lose where they're going to go, and they think, I've got to say something to get the crowd going. I know, I'll bash WWE, or I'll throw a reference to WWE, and they'll go, and then I've got him back. It just wasn't needed. But it is what it is. Certainly the Full Gear match should be interesting. Jarrett and Sting, once again, inside of a professional wrestling ring together. I don't know if this is WCW 1999 or 2000 or 2001, frankly, or if it's TNA in 2006 or 2007. Interesting. Saraya is cleared. Yes, Saraya is back and cleared to be a professional wrestler. Her redemption story has begun. On November 19, Saraya will return to the ring for the first time in nearly 5 years, squaring off against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, at AEW's Full Gear pay-per-view. The former page reveals she's, quote, 100% cleared to resume her in-ring career during a face-to-face confrontation with Baker on last night's edition of Dynamite from Boston, Massachusetts. A couple of weeks ago, she said, I underwent MRIs and X-rays, and unfortunately for Britt, I'm 100% cleared, Saraya said, eliciting a loud pop from the fans in Boston. She was very emotional during this promo. She then screamed that AEW is my house, which led to an irate Baker reminding the world of her contributions in building AEW from the ground up into a place attractive enough for superstars to move into. This is what Baker said. Do you still know how to do this? We aren't clear, Baker responded to Saraya in a mocking tone. You've come at me every day since you came to AEW, and I think I know why. I built AEW from the ground up so that superstars like you wanted to move into, and I am damn proud of it. However, that pride turns to resentment when you skip in here and call it your house. You didn't lay a single brick. I know why you're obsessed with me, because I'm everything you wish you could have been. If you think I'm lying, let me remind you, you left your house and walked into mine. I regret to inform you, we don't accept walk-ins, bitch, so make an appointment. Whoa! What a promo it was from Britt Baker. In response to Baker's scathing words, Paige recounted her roller coaster journey in the business, including her issues with drug addiction too. You have no idea what it takes to be a star, Saraya told Baker. I got hit by a car and wrestled on the same day. I handed out resumes and got turned down because I'm female. I've done MSG, O2 and Tokyo Dome, and now I'm in front of an ungrateful bitch. You don't know what it takes to sacrifice. I've been publicly humiliated by millions of people. I battled my drug addiction publicly. I've given my career and my neck to this business. This is the biggest match of your career. You versus me at Full Gear. Following their war of words, Baker tried to get a cheap shot in, but Saraya countered with the Page Turner. The segment ended with Saraya celebrating as Baker fumed at ringside. This match at Full Gear, of course, will mark Saraya's first match since a WWE live event on December 26, 2017. She announced her retirement from in-ring competition in 2018 due to a neck injury. In recent years, the likes of Bryan Danielson and Edge also returned from career-ending neck injuries. Of course, Danielson was more related to concussions, but certainly we've seen neck injuries, people that were forced to retire because of them, come back in recent years, and now Saraya is no different. I thought the segment was great. I thought it was really, really good. This is what you need in AEW. I've spoken so much about women's wrestling in AEW and the problem with it, and it's got nothing to do, as I said a million times, it's got nothing to do with the talent involved. The issue has always been, are they given the opportunity? Is the audience given a reason to care? Give the audience a reason to care. Let the talent cut promos, let them be in main events, let them have long segments, let them have proper storylines and proper feuds, not feuds whereby it's set up in 30 seconds in a backstage pre-tape. Give them time. Give the audience a reason to care. And it was good. What was quite interesting, actually, is the crowd wasn't completely on Saraya's side. They were back and forth, because what Britt Baker is saying, and this is why she's a fantastic heel, what Britt Baker said was true. It's all true. Britt Baker's been there since the start, and now you've got someone else coming in calling out her house. That's disrespectful. So some people were on the side of Britt Baker because there are people in the audience that are AEW fans, and they watch AEW because they don't want to watch WWE. So I thought it was a fantastic segment. I'm looking forward to the match. Saraya looks great, and really excited to see what happens at Full Gear. There was a massive heel turn on Dynamite last night, and it involved Samoa Joe. War Joe is no more, thank goodness, because that name is awful. On last night's edition of Dynamite, Samoa Joe shockingly attacked Wardlow, setting up a possible match between the two behemoths at Full Gear, or a possible triple threat match. The betrayal happened when Wardlow and Joe were in the ring, with Powerhouse Hobbs walking up the ramp and declaring his intentions to pursue Wardlow's TNT title. You ain't never gonna get this TNT title, Wardlow told Hobbs. It will always be mine, and for that matter, I'm going to take every title in the company. Clearly, bad choice of words. Wardlow's words didn't sit well with Ring of Honor World Television Champion Joe, who proceeded to blindside Mr. Mayhem with a cheap shot. Joe initially struck Wardlow with his title belt before locking in the Coquina Clutch. The segment ended with Joe posing with both his and Wardlow's titles, possibly issuing a challenge for a title versus title match. These tensions between the two had been teased last week on Rampage after the match against Gates of Agony. During the closing stages of the show, Wardlow could be seen pushing Samoa Joe aside to yell at Hobbs, who called out Wardlow in a post-match segment. So I know people are saying this is going to be a singles match. I think we're going to get a triple threat match or a trios match seemingly at Full Gear. I think it's going to be Joe versus Wardlow versus Hobbs. And I think it will then spin off into Joe versus Wardlow, possibly at Winter is Coming, something like that. But Samoa Joe as a heel is far better than Samoa Joe as a babyface. I mean, everyone loves Samoa Joe anyway, but certainly Samoa Joe as a heel, cutting crazy promos, is fantastic. So I'm excited to see that. Let's talk about AEW and their television rights negotiations, or an update on them. There's been a lot of speculation over whether or not AEW is in good standing with Warner Bros. Discovery. While the partnership appeared to be rosy at first, the Discovery merger has left many people questioning if a change could lead to AEW looking for a new broadcast home. As it turned out, things don't appear to be too bad between both sides. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select is reporting that sources indicate Warner Bros. Discovery has been pleased with the AEW product. The report notes that a good sign in terms of the relationship between both sides is the fact that Warner Bros. Discovery has publicly discussed adding more AEW content. Fightful previously reported that work on another documentary was underway, further buoying the strength of the relationship. A longtime Warner Bros. Discovery employee told Fightful that it would be surprising if AEW doesn't receive an extended offer that includes a sizable increase in rights fees. The report mentioned that both parties have been quite open as far as projects are concerned, so communication isn't an issue. The source also mentioned that 2022 is being looked at by television networks as a bounce-back year for the wrestling industry. The general feeling is that both AEW and WWE are coming up on renewal deals at the perfect time. As I mentioned, I know a lot of people want the demise of AEW, and I don't really understand that, because I think having a second company, a big second company, is by far, we've lived through the monopoly years. We don't need that once again. So it's a good thing for the wrestling business to have a second big company. And I know people will try and say, no, Warner Bros. Discovery, they're going to drop AEW. There has been no reference to that whatsoever. Publicly, and this isn't just AEW, it's Warner Bros. Themselves. Publicly, they've come out several times saying we're really, really happy with them. And they're expanding content with them. People can point to the ratings of Rampage and say they're not good, but the time slot's not good. And they could make that show better if they wanted to. People can point to the product not being as hot as it was a year ago, and that's fair. But at the same time, it's still doing roughly 1 million viewers every single Wednesday on TBS. In comparison to other programs that they had previously, they weren't doing that. As I always say, 3 things draw nowadays on cable television: live sport, cable news, and pro wrestling. And pro wrestling, in comparison to scripted entertainment like sitcoms, etc., is very cheap, especially if you get yourself a hit. So at the same time, they will get renewed. Warner Bros. Discovery has had a bad year since the merger. They've lost a lot of money, and they won't want to lose what is a profitable entity for them. Therefore, AEW's not going anywhere. They'll get an extension on their deal, and I'm sure they'll get certainly an increase on their television right fees. And I know, again, people will say, oh, that's not true, you don't know that, but it is going to be the case. AEW is on their way to the UK, my home, on last night's edition of Dynamite. A tease for some big announcements coming next week included AEW's first trip to the UK on commentary during the first World Title Eliminator Challenger tournament match between Eddie Kingston and Ethan Page. An announcement was made of an upcoming announcement. While running down tickets on sale for events on the West Coast, Excalibur and Tony Schiavone noted 2 big announcements coming on Dynamite next week. Revealed next week will be additional details about new tour dates in 2 major Western markets, as well as a first for AEW. Also being announced next week will be details of All Elite Wrestling's first show in the United Kingdom. This is certainly a big deal for us over here in the UK. They were sure to mention positive ratings in the United Kingdom, and it sounds like AEW is finally going to bring live shows to its clamoring fans over here across the pond. Where it's going to be, when it's going to be, we don't know. Is it going to be the stadium show at Craven Cottage? That might be the case, and if that is the case, it will probably take place in the summer, most likely, once the football season ends. But, of course, if we get more details about it, we'll talk about it here on the channel. Now, a spoiler, if you're a viewer of The Masked Singer on Fox, I don't know why you would be, but in case you are, a spoiler because we may have the identity revealed of one of the competitors, singers, celebrities on the show. I'll give you some seconds to click off it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Apparently, and not apparently, it is, especially if you listen to the clip, Chris Jericho is on The Masked Singer. This is bizarre. This came out last night and everyone went, what? That's Chris Jericho. You can't get anything past the internet wrestling community, especially trying to obscure such a signature voice. Fans of both WWE and AEW seem to think they've got the answer as to who is the secret celebrity identity behind the Masked Singer character, The Bride, set to make her debut on last night's Week 6 edition of the 8th series of the hit singing competition. The Bride certainly seems to hit some familiar notes. A clip from last night's episode of Fox's hit reality competition, The Masked Singer, has been making the rounds online, and the voice does sound familiar. you can see the clip on social media, it went viral. But if this Bridezilla doesn't get eventually be revealed to be current AEW star and current Ring of Honor World Champion, the Ocho, Chris Jericho, will be shocked. As I mentioned, it's clearly him. watch the clip. It's Chris Jericho. Not only is it like, oh, that sounds, it's Chris Jericho. It's not even, you can't even hide it. We have some news for another title match on Rampage this week. Orange Cassidy once again will be defending his All-Atlantic Championship. Of course, he defeated Shibata last week in an Atlantic City Dream match. This week, he'll be facing off against Lee Johnson. The match was set up in a backstage vignette that, to be honest, was horrible. It was horrible between the Factory and the Best Friends, and yeah, it wasn't good. But we're getting an Atlantic Championship match on Friday on Rampage. And finally, a match has been announced for Full Gear regarding the TBS Championship. Jade Cargill will be putting her title and undefeated streak on the line against Nyla Rose at Full Gear. Of course, the story has been that Nyla Rose has been running around with the championship for months. I don't know why AEW wouldn't just say it's stolen, give it back. Nevertheless, we're going to get it settled at Full Gear, and Jade Cargill, of course, is going to win that match. So there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.